Jamal Murray, can he go for another 50-point game? That's what we're going to find out on Tuesday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking at Tuesday's games in the NBA. We've got a Game 7. We've got a second round game as well. So let's talk about those games right now. And the first one we're going to look at is the Boston Celtics and the Toronto Raptors. The Celtics won game one pretty comfortably. Toronto comes in as 1.5 point favorites in this one, which is pretty curious. Both these games have low totals, 217 and 217.5. So we're looking at lower type scoring games, but it's really interesting to see Boston come in as underdogs after winning that game. Now you expect some sort of bounce back from Toronto, and you don't expect Toronto to shoot 25% from three, while Boston and Marcus Smart in particular are hitting every single shot. So that's an interesting line. I think there's something in that. I'm not 100% sure what it is at this point, but it does make for hopefully we get a closer encounter. Now I'm going to be looking at DraftKings pricing for today. Let's look at Marcus Smart, who's at $6,000. That's a $400 price rise for Smart because he went off last game. He had 37 points, but prior to that, he had been a little bit struggling a bit. He'd scored 21 real-life points. He shot 60% from the field, and those things aren't a reliable indicator for Smart. So I don't think that we should look at him and say, well, he's an absolute lock for 35 or 36, but to get 30 points, I feel like he can. I just don't feel like it's 100% solid. Kyle Lowry at 7,700 looked a little bit hampered on that ankle injury. Still had 37 in 35 minutes though, and you feel like he'll play a few more minutes if the game is closer and probably push to 40. So I think that feels a bit more secure, while Kemba Walker at 7,600 is also really going well at the moment, averaging over 40 for his last 5 games, and at 7,600, do I prefer him to Lowry? I think Lowry probably has a little bit of a higher upside, but Kemba at that price absolutely is an option for us. Freddie VanVleet's at 7,800, more expensive than Lowry, more expensive than Walker at this point, which is definitely a surprise.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
I'd only be looking at Fred as a GPP guy, and I'm not super into it. Terrence Davis, Brad Wanamaker, no thanks. At shooting guard, Storman Norman Powell's at 4,900. Played a lot of minutes, but was terrible in game one, just 12 points. He will absolutely bounce back, but he is not a reliable option to me. He's very up and down, and it does depend on how the shooting is going for him, as it does for so many players, but he doesn't supplement it with rebounds or assists or big steals and block numbers. So he is a tough one to look at. He can be a 30-point player, no doubt, but he could also be a 15-point guy. So he's a GPP guy with some value there. 7,300 for Jaylen Brown. He had 30 points in game one. 7,300 is a pretty good price for Jaylen, but his recent form hasn't been sparkling. I'm not falling over myself to use him here. At small forward, it's Tatum at 9,300. I think he's a lock for 40. I think he's probably a 45 lock. I like it at that price, while the Jedi, OG Anunoby.
But what about scarves?
OG.
Balenciaga
Stop
ones.
OG. You better stop OG.
He's at 4,800. I just don't see the high upside, and I also don't see a secure floor for Anunoby in this one. For your big men, Marc Gasol's at 4,100.
Oh, hi, Mark.
He just really can't get anything going at the moment. I find it real. That's a low price for Marc Gasol, but he just cannot accumulate stats at this stage, and that makes him hard to use. Siakam at 8,000. He's definitely not an $8,000 player. Can it come? Sure, but I've been saying, we've been looking for him to bring that for the first round of the playoffs, for game one, for the bubble games, for the preseason restart scrimmage games. He just hasn't brought it. It's been hard to see, but I don't think he is worth an $8,000 price tag. Daniel Tice at 5,200, really good. 39 points in game one. Will he do that again? Probably not. But at 5,200, can he get us 25 or 26? Probably. They're not going to play much Enes Kanter against Ibaka and Gasol, so that does help Tice's minutes. I think he can be like a 26, 27 point player, but that doesn't give you huge amounts of value. Ibaka's at 6,200, probably a little bit high there, while the Rock DJ Rob Williams, 3,300. He had 25 points in game one. He should get those backup center minutes, so I think he is absolutely a GPP guy we can look at, because if he gets 15 minutes, then he should get 17, 18 points and provide some of that value that you're looking for. If you want to talk about providing value that you're looking for, rockauto.com is what you should be looking at, because if you're looking to buy auto parts for your car, why would you go into your local chain auto parts retailer? The bloke behind the counter is going to have to say, yeah, probably don't have that in stock. He's going to have to type it in on his computer and order it in. You can do that yourself with rockauto.com. And best of all, rockauto.com, they don't have different prices for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. It's the same reliably low price right across the board. They have everything from engine control modules, brake parts, tail lamps, to motor oil, even new carpet. And whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, you can get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go to RockAuto.com to shop for auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. And when you go to RockAuto.com right now and you see all those parts that are available for your car or truck, right Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. All right, on to game 2, and that is the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. This series has unbelievably been pushed out to game 7. Actually, before I do go into that, I probably should mention some FanDuel options for that game 1. So I apologize. Let's do that now. Smart at 5,700 and Jaylen Brown at 63. Much better FanDuel plays than they are in DraftKings. And Lowry at 75 and Tatum at 9,000. I really like. Van Vliet at 76 looks all right. Kemba at 78, but they're not quite as valuable as they are over on DraftKings. While 8,200 for Siakam just feels way too high. Sorry for that detour, because we've got to talk about one of the most ridiculous and entertaining series of all time, really. This Utah and Denver series. The Jazz went up 3-1. It's now 3-3 in Game 7. Jamal Murray has scored 50 points twice. Donovan Mitchell has scored 50 points twice. Murray has averaged or scored 142 points in his last 3 games. He is elevating himself to a ridiculous level at the moment. Him and Mitchell are just not missing. They are shooting the absolute lights out, elevating their games. I think it's probably going to lead them to be somewhat overdrafted in fantasy next year, but it's been so fun to watch. We know that Gary Harris returned last game.
Nice, Gary!
He'll still probably be on a minutes limit, while Farton Will Barton remains out. The point guard spot, Jordy Clarkson's at 5,400. He played 30 minutes last game. He wasn't particularly good in terms of DFS output, but he is a GPP guy, while Mike Conley at 6,800, constantly getting us 35 plus. I do really like Conley. Monty Morris has been starting, but he doesn't really get much of an opportunity because Eche Homo, the headmaster, Jamal Murray, 9,700. Murray is averaging 73 over the last 3. That is an $1,100 price rise, though, for Murray. Can he continue at this level? I'm going to put my nuts on the line and say no. And that's not really a bold call, because the bloke's averaging 46 points a game. He's not going to do that. He's averaging 72 DraftKings points a game. I don't think he's going to do that. At 9,700, can he bring 50 points? You would have to think that he's a good chance to do it. Is it expected value for him to do that again? I know he's going to get the shots. It is a weird one. I think that price rise scares me off a bit there with Murray, but he's just been so good. Now, on the other side, you look at Don Mitchell.
He's Don. He's good.
He's at 9,900. He's giving us 50 literally almost every single game. It is an extra $200. Both of those guys are getting to that stage where it's possibly at a level where it's maybe getting too high for it, which does make it hard to utilize those guys. So I'm not ruling them out, but it is a lot of money to spend up, assuming that level of production continues. At shooting guard, Joe Ingles at 5,300. He is just ceding all shots to Jamal Murray, which he probably should at this point. So he's not an option. Gaz Harris, don't want to use him in his limited role. At small forward, Royce O'Neal's at 4,500. I like him for tournament play. He's been quite down, but he's getting a lot of minutes. While Jeremy Grant's at 5,100. Similarly, he is a GPP option for me. Mickey Porter's at 55. I don't want to spend that. He's really getting cooked defensively, and I think that they might have to limit his play if they're going to win this game. And then for the big men, Big Chungus Nikola Jokic, 9,500. Absolute rock-solid floor for Jokic. He hasn't been exploding, but he's getting 47 points almost every game, and that's really, really strong as a cash play. The big fella, Rudy Gobert,
Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert.
Gobert is playing a ton of minutes at the moment. He's averaging 41 minutes over the last 3, but the production isn't really there. And at 7,900, I'm not feeling supremely confident with Gobert, but with those minutes, it is intriguing, at least for a tournament, if you want to pivot off someone like Jokic. Paul Millsap's at 4,700. He is really, really struggling at the moment, while Mason Plumlee and Tony Bradley, they're probably not the guys to look at. On FanDuel, now Gobert's at 7,300. I think that's a lot more palatable. Jeremy Grant at 51, Jokic at 98. But let's go down to how the big fellas look, and that's Donovan Mitchell at 8,500. That is as smash-worthy as it gets on FanDuel. And then you compare it to the Headmaster, who's at 9,400. Of course, Murray's been really good, but 9,400 versus 8,500. Mitchell's probably the one I go for there. They are different positions, so maybe you could slot them both in together. I just don't think that this level of production from Jamal is going to be able to stick. It just doesn't feel likely at this point, which is a shame because it's been super impressive to watch him going out there and putting up those sort of numbers. Guys, that will wrap up today's show. Don't forget, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Leave a comment down below, give it a 5-star rating and review. And I'll be back tomorrow to look at the games for Wednesday. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.